Alright, students. Today is our third lecture of environment. Let us start. So, anything to ask? Any questions you have from the previous class, students? Anything to ask from the previous class? Just give me 1 minute, I'll quickly. Yeah. Okay, what was our last question of last topic of discussion? So Nisha, Bharat and Sagar, all three of you have joined in. Okay. So tell me, what was our last topic of discussion, guys? What did we discuss last? Last topic of discussion, sources of greenhouse gases, and I think we were discussing methane. Yes. So we have discussed all these things. Ocean deoxygenation is actually going to come tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll talk about it, right? When we discuss the impacts. Okay. So what I can recall that we were discussing, yes, we were discussing the main sources, the major anthropogenic sources of methane, and out of anthropogenic sources of methane we discovered that 41% of all the methane produced on earth, it comes from agriculture and dairy, right? Precisely rice agriculture or rice cultivation, right? Up till here we have discussed precisely in rice cultivation, and 33% comes from dairy. For rice, I believe I have already given you a solution, that is direct sowing of rice, right? When we promote direct sowing of rice, we can expect that there would be a decrease of up to 80% of methane emissions. Why it is the case? Because rice production requires standing water, and the standing water that is needed, it basically increases methane emissions, just like how it happens in wetlands. Got it? Now let us start. Now let us start with dairy sector. What all suggestions with the same FAO report, the same report from Food and Agriculture Organization, what suggestion it gives on dairy sector? What all suggestions are there? So guys, for dairy sector, they have given 4 suggestions. The first suggestion is, the first suggestion that they have given, it is introducing new efficient and nutritious fodder. New efficient or nutritious fodder. Guys, fodder can also be called as forage. They have used the word forage, not fodder. It is the same thing. Forage. So introducing new types of fodder. Here I would like to give you an example of a water fern. A fern is a type of plant. It's a different type of plant, guys. Fern. I'll talk about ferns in the example of in the second topic, in the second chapter. There is a type of fern called azolla fern. There is a special type of fern called as azolla fern. Azolla fern. Now what is azolla fern? I'll show you the image. I think it will be better if I show you image. Look at this. This is called azolla fern. Azolla fern, and see, this is azolla fern. So azolla fern is a type of a plant that grows in water. It's a water fern. It's a type of a water fern. And what is interesting, guys, we also call it the mosquito fern. This azolla fern is a type of a plant that floats on water, and guys, it is supposed to be a very rich source of protein. It is supposed to be rich in nitrogen that can easily be mixed. Even humans can also eat it. So azolla fern can easily be mixed with any other kind of fodder. See, when you talk about the quality of, like, if I ask you this question, guys, do you know which cow in the world produces maximum milk? Does anyone know which cow in across the world is known for producing highest amount of milk? Anyone? Highest amount of milk. The name of the cow is Holstein cow. Holstein cow. I'll show it to you. It is a cow from New Zealand. This is Holstein cow. Look at this. Holstein cow. It's actually a cow from, sorry, not New Zealand. It's a cow from Netherlands. New Zealand may be here. This is also found in New Zealand. It is a cow from Netherlands. It's called Holstein cow, right? Holstein, Friesteen, these are the names given to this cow. Holland, basically it's a cow from Holland, and this is considered as the most productive cow in the world. You'd be surprised to know that this cow can produce up to 6,000 liters of milk. 6,000 liters of milk this single cow can produce in its entire lactation period. Throughout its lactation period, this cow can produce up to 6,000 liters of milk, right? Throughout the lactation period. Holstein cow. Now, guys, if you talk about the Indian cows, some of the good varieties of Indian cows are Nellore cow. Nellore is a type of a breed found in Andhra Pradesh. This is supposed to be producing good quality milk. Nellore. This one is not Nellore. What you see on the image is actually a hybrid of Nellore and some Brazilian cow. The actual Nellore cow looks like this. This is the Nellore cow, right? Again, white in color, right? This is Nellore cows. These are some good quality cows. Then other good quality cows in India are, other good quality cows of India are Sahiwal, popular cow variety in North India, Sahiwal. Another popular cow is Gir. The Gir cow, again very famous in North India, right? These are the popular varieties of cows in the country. And these cows, guys, they are supposed to be high milk producing cows of India. But if you compare the milk production of Holstein and this cow, you will be surprised to know that Holstein cow can produce up to 6,000 liters of milk in one lactation cycle. Whereas the Gir cow of India, or Nellore, or for that matter Sahiwal, they can produce maximum 1,500 liters of milk. That means what Holstein cow can produce, these cows can produce just 1/4 of these cows. 1/4 of milk. Now the question is, if it produces just 1/4 of the milk, does that mean that Indian cows are inferior? Of course not, guys. Indian cows are not inferior. They produce less milk. One of the major reasons for that is because the quality of fodder provided is extremely poor. You know, there are generally two types of fodder that a cow needs. Cow needs green fodder, which is supposed to be also known as wet fodder, right? And dry fodder. When it comes to green fodder is supposed to be rich in proteins, rich in nutrients. Green fodder in India, there is a deficiency of nearly 80%. There is a deficit of 80% when it comes to green fodder in the country. And when it comes to the dry fodder, there is a deficit of 50%. And that is the main reason why many of the cow in India is found to be eating garbage. Many cow in India is found to be eating rubbish, and that also affects their health, and eventually the quality of milk also gets decreased. So one good suggestion for improving the quality of fodder is that why don't we replace wherever possible, instead of introducing you know expensive cows, why don't we improve the quality of fodder? And that is where azolla fern can become a very interesting or very important constituent or very important support system, how we can improve the quality of fodder, right? Azolla fern can be a good replacement of green fodder, or it can be mixed with any other green fodder and given to the cow. The cows are easily able to consume it, and they are supposed to be high in nutrition, right? So improving the quality of nutrients can improve the overall quantity of milk, and when the overall quantity of milk can be improved, we can expect less cows would be needed to satisfy the current demand, and this will somehow help in reducing the methane emissions as well. Got it? This is the first part. The first part of the point is that by improving or by introducing new quality of fodder, right? New efficient or nutritious forage. That is point number one. Tell me yes in the chat if you guys have understood. Tell me yes in the chat if you have understood, right? New type of forage, right? All right, perfect. Now the second suggestion that they have given is feed management. Feed management. Now feed management is somewhat similar to a new type of forage only, right? Changing or introducing new type of forage. Feed management basically talks about we can manage the feed by introducing alternatives, right? Alternative feeds other than azolla fern, other than this kind of things, if there is possible for managing the feed. Like for example, we promote agriculture in such a way so that we can introduce I'll give you an example. All of you guys are aware that in India, mustard is a very popular oil seed. I hope all of you know. Mustard oil is consumed across the country, right? Some people may be consuming high amount of mustard oil, some people may consume low, but some mustard oil is being consumed in possibly across the country, right? Mustard oil is a very popular variety of oil in India, right? But do you guys know that mustard, have you ever noticed that mustard comes up with a slight pungent smell? Mustard की एक smell होता है. There is a special kind of smell that basically mustard carry, right? All of you must have felt that mustard carries a certain kind of smell, right? And because of that smell, mustard leaves no animal eats. Animals don't like to eat mustard leaves. The chemical that carries the smell in that mustard, we call them thiosulfates. There are some thiosulfates which basically are chemicals that carry those pungent smell in mustard, we call them thiosulfates, and these thiosulfates are the reason why animals don't like to eat mustard, right? Don't like to eat mustard. So what FAO suggests, that why don't you start introducing those kind of crops in which a part of that crop may be consumed by humans, but other part of the crop may be consumed by animals. Like if you talk about wheat, the wheat grains are consumed by humans, but the grass of the wheat, the leaf and grass of wheat can actually be used as a good green fodder. It's a good green fodder, guys. Similarly, when you talk about corn, the corn is basically a plant where the corn can be consumed by humans as well as animals. If you talk about rice leaves can also be used or converted into fodder for animals, right? So you have to choose those kind of varieties of crops which are also can be helpful in improving the quality of fodder for animals. So guys, if you talk about mustard, the Indian mustard is supposed to be producing a lot of thiosulfates. That is why animals don't like to eat it. But if you talk about the Canadian mustard, there is a Canadian mustard called canola, and this canola mustard is quite popular in India also. Canola seed oil is also being sold in India. So Indian mustard, they call it rapeseed oil, right? But the canola mustard, this is supposed to be a type of mustard which does not have thiosulfates. And in Canada and America, a lot of animals feed includes the canola leaves. So this is what again a suggestion made by FAO, that why don't you change your own feed and also change the feed of animals by choosing to grow those kind of crops in the field which can partly support human health and can partly support animal nutrition. So there is actually, so canola grows in extremely cold countries. So Pusa Institute has actually made a hybrid of canola as well as Indian mustard, which has less thiosulfates and can grow in Indian conditions and can also actually be used as a popular fodder alternative for animals also. I hope you guys are able to understand. So this is what they have suggested for feed management. So here you can mention canola hybrid. The hybrid, they call it the Pusa canola hybrid, right? Pusa canola hybrid, which is basically developed by Indian Agriculture Research Institute, also famously called as the Pusa Institute, and they have been able to make a hybrid version of canola seed oil, which a canola seed which can actually be cultivated in India and it will not have any thiosulfates. I hope all of you guys are able to understand. So that is how feed management point of FAO says. The third action that FAO has suggested is that it's called rumen modification. By modifying the rumen modification. Now what is this rumen modification? Guys, have you ever heard of probiotics? आपने सुना है कभी? Have you ever heard of this term probiotics or prebiotics? Have you ever heard of this term? Tell me quickly. Sagar, you have heard of probiotics? What about Bharat, Nisha? What do you guys think? Have you ever heard of the word probiotics before? Yes, very good. Curd is a very good example of a probiotic. Very good, Bharat. So what is a probiotic, guys? Probiotics basically means good bacteria. Probiotics are actually good bacteria. Probiotics are good bacteria, guys. They are good bacteria. What do I mean by this good bacteria? Probiotics are actually those kind of bacteria which are considered to be healthy for the human health. Like if you take curd, for example, curd contains a bacteria called lactobacillus. This bacteria eats the food, eats the milk and convert it into curd. It is responsible for the process of curdling. And this bacteria is also considered to be important because it improves. Just 1 minute. Thank you. Because it improves the overall quality of, it improves the nutritional quality of curd. Because what happens when you eat curd not only helps in better digestion, but the bacteria lactobacillus, it actually helps in better absorption of other nutrients. So you know that we often mix curd with many other food, and by mixing curd with other foods improves the absorption of nutrients from all the other food sources. It improves the absorption of nutrients from all other food sources, and that's how we basically feel better. Our immune system improves, our overall health well-being improves. These are called probiotics. Okay. Now guys, we all know that in the rumen of the cow, there are some bacteria that are responsible for producing more methane. So guys, if humans can consume probiotics that can help in improving the overall gut health of the humans, and through this we are able to improve absorption of food nutrients, why can't we replace the bacteria? Because these bacteria otherwise are not doing anything. They are simply helping in producing curd. But why can't we replace these bacteria with some of those bacteria which can also break down food into curd, but instead of producing so much of methane, produce somewhat less methane, right? So it is possible for us to change the bacterial composition from methanogenic bacteria to methanotrophic bacteria. Why don't we start putting those bacteria into the gut which instead of producing methane, eats methane at the same time, right? Eats methane at the same time. So guys, we call these kind of bacteria as proteobacteria. Guys, remember this. I'll explain this part. We have two bacteria. One is methanogenic methanogenic bacteria, and the second one is proteobacteria. Methanogenic bacteria are those bacteria that produces methane. How? They break down the food and produce methane. But imagine if in the rumen of the cow we put some proteobacteria as well. Methanogenic bacteria are there already, but along with the methanogenic bacteria we put some proteobacteria. The proteobacteria will have a responsibility that it will break down the methane. It's a methanotrophic bacteria. Methanotrophic bacteria. See, the meaning of the word trophos. The meaning of the word trophos means nutrition. Trophos means nutrition. So methanotrophic means bacteria that produce methane as their source of nutrition. Methanotrophic bacteria is the bacteria that consume methane as a source of nutrition. So they consume methane, break down the methane and convert it into CO2. So methanotrophic bacteria, they absorb methane and release CO2. This is methanotrophic bacteria. So guys, what the scientists say, that these methanogenic bacteria are there already, who break down the food and release methane. But why don't we just replace the methanogenic bacteria with that of methanotrophic bacteria? Or if not even replacement, we are just modifying it. We are just adding methanotrophic bacteria also in the gut, so that the bacteria, the methane that is produced in the gut, it is also being converted into CO2 at the same time, right? So if it is possible for us, we can easily modify the rumen. And where we have methanogenic bacteria, we can simply supplement methanotrophic bacteria as well. And these methanotrophic bacteria can simply help in reducing the methane emissions of the bovine animals. Are you guys able to understand? Please tell me yes in the chat. So this is called rumen modification. So we'll modify the rumen by putting some external bacteria. Like we humans also take bacteria externally in the form of curd, in the form of fermented food, and this fermented food improves our own gut health, our own intestine health, our own digestive system. Then why can't we modify the overall bacterial composition of cow's rumen so that cow stops producing that much of methane, reduces the methane emissions? And guys, these experiments are going on where the bacteria are being replaced with methanotrophic bacteria, and we are finding that cows end up producing less methane in the cud, and they produce CO2. That is not such a big problem, but methane emissions get reduced. I hope all of you guys are able to understand. So this was the third suggestion, and the fourth suggestion is selective breeding. Selective breeding means, see, even when you talk about bovine, even when you talk about cows themselves are of multiple varieties. There are so many different varieties of cows. There are so many different breeds of cows. In India itself, I just showed you the image of Sahiwal, Gir, and what you call Nellore cow. So when you talk about cows, it is obvious that cows themselves are of different breeds, that some cows naturally produces more methane and some cows naturally produces less methane, right? It is not just the difference in their fodder quality. Even if you do not try to modify their rumen, the cows naturally are producing somewhat more methane in some cases and less methane in some other cases. So FAO suggests that why don't you start doing selective breeding? Why don't we start simply promoting selective breeding so that the cows that produce less methane, they are promoted and they are breeded with all the other varieties, so that the hybrids that are also formed, they happen to produce less methane than their predecessors. These are the 4 suggestions that FAO has given in order to reduce the methane emissions of the dairy sector. Please tell me yes in the chat if you guys have understood all the 4 suggestions. Please write down yes in the chat, guys, quickly. If you have understood all the 4 suggestions, please write down yes in the chat. Right? All right. Okay. Perfect. Perfect. So let us start. So guys, this is what we have under the discussion of, methane emissions. But guys, I think it is important that I discuss methane. Like we have heard, we have studied methane, everything here, right? All the major sources of methane also we have covered. I think among sources, I can see anthropogenic sources we have talked about dairy, paddy, legacy waste. Then a lot of methane comes from mining industry, right? Fossil fuel emissions. All right, perfect. So these are the main sources of methane emissions. Acha, remember guys, methane emissions also comes from forest fires, and I am writing it here. They also come from forest fires and agricultural stubble burning. Agriculture stubble burning and forest fire also produces methane, right? They are also releasing methane at the same time, right? Now there are multiple ways how methane can be produced in forest fire. I'll give you a way to think, and that will give you a good insight that how methane emissions can happen in forest fire burning. I'll tell you guys, whenever forest fire happens, pay attention guys, these are the things which you will not find in books. No books contain this kind of information that I'm sharing right now. Guys, whenever forest fire happens, whenever forest fire takes place, forest fire usually is of 2 types. The forest fire usually is of 2 types. One is called line fire and the other one is called area fire. Forest fires are generally of 2 types, line or area fire. Line fire means where the fire is at a single seam. That means the fire is there, but it has not spread into an area. It has spread only in a single direction, not on an area, right? The fire has not spread across an area, but only at a single direction. In single direction only this fire is located. That's called line fire. And area fire means that the fire has spread over an area. It has spread over an area. Okay, that is area fire. Let me explain what is the purpose of understanding both line fire and area fire. Remember guys, line fire and area fire, if you understand, this is also used as a strategy to manage forest fire. It is also used as a strategy to manage forest fire, line fire and area fire. Let's see. So guys, line fire is that the forest has caught fire but in a single line. In a single line it has caught fire. Okay. So how do we manage the line fire? So the concept is very simple. That as the line extends, as the fire line extends, what happens? See, we all know that fire will make the air warmer. Fire is going to make all the air warmer, and we all know that warm air will have a tendency to rise upwards. Warm air is lighter and warm air will have a tendency to rise in the upward direction. All of us can visualize that. So this is the line, and the line is going to make the fire move upward. Air moves upwards, right? The air will have a tendency to moving upward. Now so imagine if the fire is in this line, like you can think about like this. I'll show it to you. Let's suppose I have this particular, so let's suppose this is the fire that we have. This is at a single line. The fire is in a single line. So all the air above the fire, all the air above the fire, this air will get lighter, it will get warmer, and the air will start rising up. As this air starts rising upwards, it will create a low pressure. A low pressure will be created above the fire. A low pressure is going to be created because all the air has got lighter and risen upwards. And the moment a low pressure is created here, this low pressure will attract more air. So what happens in a line fire, when the air starts rising upwards, it creates a low pressure across the line. It creates a low pressure around the line, and to fill up this low pressure, air starts moving back like this. Air starts moving back like this to fill up this low pressure. Now what is happening? If a line fire is observed, it is at a line, and line receives air from both the sides, and as it receives air from both the sides, air supports more fire. Air will support more fire, and the fire is going to get larger. The fire is going to get taller, right? Because it is being supplied, the air is being supplied from both ends. Oxygen comes from both the ends, and the fire remains more active. You cannot take down this kind of fire. It is difficult to take down if the fire is on a line. But imagine if the fire has caught on an area. If a fire has caught in an area, this is how it works. Area fire is going to be caught like this across an area. What happens in the case of area fire? Of course, the entire area has caught fire. The air around the entire area will get lighter. The air will start rising, right? And as the air starts rising, across the region, low pressure is created. Across the region, it will create low pressure, right? Across the region, low pressure is going to be created. So what is going to happen? All this low pressure, all this air that has reached here, it creates high pressure here and low pressure here. So what happens? The air starts traveling like this, high to low pressure. The air starts traveling like this, but this air can only support the fire at the edges. Only the edges will have fire. Rest in the internal side of the forest, we will not have any fire. This will only be a place where you will only see smoke coming out. I'll show you the image. If ever you search an image of forest fire, if you ever search forest fire aerial view, look at this. See, look at this, how the forest catches fire. Can you guys notice? दिख रहा है आपको? Look at this, guys. This is a fire, this is a forest that has caught fire, but you can see fire only at the edges. Can you see? The fire is only at the edges. The entire internal area is simply showing smoke. Smoke is there. Basically, you guys may be knowing that most people who die in fire, they don't die because of burning. They die because of suffocation. I hope all of you would agree, right? Most people who die in fire, they don't die because of burning, but they die because of suffocation. Actually, what happens, guys, it is the edges are the places where we have line fire, because this is the area where the fire gets full support of additional oxygen. Oxygen supply is high and fire gets all the oxygen requirement, and those oxygen can support a much taller, fire flames. But when you talk about the internal area is that region where the oxygen supply is less. And because there is less oxygen supply in this region, this is the region which releases either carbon monoxide and methane. From the external areas, you can expect CO2. Are you guys able to understand? Tell me yes in the chat. Come on, quickly. Tell me yes in the chat if you guys are able to visualize that why forest fires also sometimes emits methane and carbon monoxide. Tell me, guys, yes in the chat. Bharat, you have understood. Sagar, what do you think? Nisha, what do you think? Did you understand? Both of you? What is the difference between forest line fire and area fire? It is the line fire that produces CO2, but area fire produces mostly methane and carbon monoxide. Sagar, Nisha, what do you guys think? Come on, quickly. Do you guys understand area fire and line fire? They both are not responding. What has happened? Chalo, this is called, alright, so this is what we have under line fire and area fire. And whenever there is a fire spread out across a region, whenever the fire has spread to a wider area, it is likely to produce methane and carbon monoxide. And guys, that is what happens even in the agriculture stubble of India. when agriculture stubble is burnt for a major area, for the massive, all these, for agricultural fields, a lot of these fields catch fire that look like an area fire, and they happen to produce methane as well as carbon monoxide. I hope all of you get it right. This is what happens in the case of methane emissions and carbon monoxide emissions and area fire. Guys, there is also one more type of fire. It's called zombie fire. I'll show it to you. Zombie fires. We don't have zombie fires in India, but these zombie fires are found in cooler countries. Russia, Canada, Central Asia. Zombie fires. Zombie fires are, look at this. So zombie fires are this type of fires. मुझे लगता है कोई गेम भी है, I think. Zombie fires. Methane लिख देता हूँ. Methane emissions of zombie fire. So guys, these are zombie fires. Look at this. It's a fire that is actually releasing methane and carbon monoxide, and these are the fires that are basically caught in the peat region of the forest. Do you understand peat? Peat is basically all that organic matter of plants, animals, which has got, the plants that have died, they eventually settle. And because the conditions are of such a nature that the decomposition process is very slow. So sometimes this peat sometimes breaks down and produces methane, and internally itself, this peat catches fire. So in this peat that has caught fire, it does not look like a fire from outside. It only appears to be releasing some kind of smoke. So that peat which catches fire in cooler countries, because the rate of degradation is very slow, rate of decomposition is slow here. I've already told you what is aerobic, anaerobic decomposition. So these are cooler countries which happens to face this problem of zombie fires. And guys, these zombie fires are also considered to be factors responsible for high emissions of methane. Look at these. So there are so many zombie fires that we have reported where the forest fire level, like the forest has stopped producing any visible flames. Like look at this. This is a zombie fire in the Arctic region. It is not producing any visible flames. But what has happened, the dry or the old peat or the old organic matter has started catching fire a little, that releases all the methane that was trapped internally in small pores, and it goes out in the atmosphere. These zombie fires, guys, we call zombie fires as environmental time bombs. Right, environmental time bombs. Why? Because these are basically those small fire units that are simply releasing methane, CO2, carbon monoxide into the atmosphere, and they are supposed to be increasing as the global warming increases. So as the world is getting warmer and warmer, the zombie fires incidences are also increasing. The problem is most of the zombie fire goes unnoticed because it is found in those areas where population density is very small, and these are extremely cold places where you never know where the smog of the fire can easily get mixed with the fog, right, in the region. So that is what the zombie fires are. So zombie fire is also another source of methane emissions, right? It is also another source of methane emissions. So guys, for methane, I think I have told you enough sources, right? Zombie fire is also a good source. I'll write it down here. Zombie fire. Right? This is also another source of methane emissions. So guys, these are all the sources from where methane can be emitted out. Now what I'll do here, I'll quickly talk about some of the initiatives that we have taken to check the methane spread, right? Because methane itself is being released in so many sources, and it's a naturally occurring greenhouse gas. So let me quickly talk about how many different types of initiatives are there. I'm using my own notes for this particular purpose. What all initiatives are there just to check the methane emissions? Okay, so I've already told you about this. Yeah. So in 2024, please write down these points here. In 2024, these are initiative only for methane, guys. Initiatives only for methane. Write down global methane tracker. Global Methane Tracker. Global Methane Tracker. What is this Global Methane Tracker? So guys, this Global Methane Tracker has been launched by International Energy Agency. It comes under United Nations. Right, in 2024, Global Methane Tracker was launched by International Energy Agency. It comes under United Nations, guys. Okay, this Global Methane Tracker is basically to track, it is to track methane emissions, from fossil fuel producing companies. So all those companies across the world who produce fossil fuel, how much of the methane emissions, how much of the methane gets emitted out in the atmosphere by these companies. This is Global Methane Tracker, the first initiative. Then guys, the second initiative is oil and gas, OGDC. In the same year, oil and gas decarbonization charter was signed. Oil and gas decarbonization charter was signed. It's called OGDC. Unfortunately, Indian companies are not part of it, but it is under the Global Methane Tracker only, Oil and Gas Decarbonization Charter. The idea is there are 50, it was signed by 50 oil and gas producing companies. 50 oil and gas producing companies. They have signed. 50 oil and gas producing companies, they have signed this particular agreement, and it is basically to reduce, you can add on, 50 companies have signed this agreement to reduce the methane emissions from in their production process. So whatever methane gets emitted by these companies, it is the charter is basically to reduce them. But guys, what is important is that these 50 companies who have signed the agreement, they contribute nearly 40% of global fossil fuel production. 40% of global fossil fuel production. So if these companies have taken a pledge to reduce their methane emissions from in the oil and gas sector, then this could be a good initiative, right? It is Oil and Gas Decarbonization Charter. Then guys, after this, next initiative is particularly for methane, Oil and Gas Methane Partnership 2.0. Again in 2024. Most initiatives, guys, most initiatives of methane emissions were taken in 2024 only, right? It is called OGMP, Oil and Gas Methane Partnership. OGMP 2.0, Oil and Gas Methane Partnership 2.0, OGMP 2.0. And guys, this has been an initiative from UNEP, United Nations Environment Program. This is an initiative from UNEP, United Nations Environment Program. So you can just write down in one sentence. Actually, why am I telling you these things? Because you never know, UPSC can ask these kind of initiatives. These are the international initiatives. They can simply write down this initiative and ask you related to methane emissions, which organization has introduced this, what is the objective. That's it. Nothing more will be asked beyond this. Okay, so Oil and Gas Methane Partnership 2.0. It has been launched by UNEP, United Nations Environment Program. And guys, this is basically for reporting. You can just write down, it is for monitoring and reporting. Monitoring and reporting framework. It's a monitoring and reporting framework. Please write down, it is a monitoring and reporting framework. It's a monitoring and reporting framework for oil and gas industry, for oil and gas industry monitoring and reporting framework for oil and gas industries who are improving on reducing their methane emissions. So who are improving on reducing their methane emissions. So this will basically be a system to check that whether the emissions made, whether the commitments that these companies are making, that they will, the 50 oil and gas companies, they are saying that we will reduce our methane emissions, if they are really working out or not. We have the OGMP 2.0 partnership, which is going to monitor and report if these initiatives are really working or not. Okay, if these initiatives are really working, right? This is OGMP. Then guys, after OGMP we have International Methane Emissions Observatory. This was introduced in 2021. Sorry, not the same year. IMEO, International Methane Emissions Observatory. IMEO, International Methane Emissions Observatory. IMEO guys, this was started in 2021. In 2021 it was launched. Actually guys, it was also approved by the G20 summit of 2021. 2023 it happened in India. 2021 it happened, I think, from which country it was transferred to India? G20's chairmanship was transferred from, I think, from Brazil. It was transferred from Brazil to India. So in the two, you can just write down, it was started in 2021. 2021 it was launched. IMEO, International Methane Emission Observatory. It was launched in the year 2021. Okay, what is the function, guys? You can understand. It says International Methane Emission Observatory. So it is nothing but a satellite or an observatory to check methane emissions. You can just write down. It is to focus on methane emissions from fossil fuel industries, agriculture and waste. Fossil fuel industries, agriculture and waste. Right? International Methane Emission Observatory. It is to focus methane emissions from fossil fuel, agriculture and waste production. Right? Methane emissions from these three areas. International Methane Emission Observatory. And guys, this International Methane Emission Observatory, it is part of the Global Methane Pledge. It is part of the Global Methane Pledge. It is part of the Global Methane Pledge. What is this Global Methane Pledge? I'll explain this to you. Please pay attention. In the same year, 2021, Global Methane Pledge, it was introduced. This Global Methane Pledge was introduced under United Nations Environment Program. The Global Methane Pledge was introduced under United Nations Environment Program. And guys, you can understand this. The Global Methane Pledge, its objective is to reduce methane emissions, by 30%. To reduce methane emissions by 30% of 2020 levels by 2030. So whatever methane emissions the world was making in the year 2020, the Global Methane Pledge aims to reduce the methane emissions by 30%. Aims to reduce the methane emissions by 30% by 2030. So by 2030, We have an objective of reducing the methane emissions by 30%. Okay, that is the objective, to reduce the methane emissions by 30% by 2030. Now guys, let me tell you one thing here. India has not signed the global methane pledge. India has not joined this pledge. We have not joined this pledge, guys. Why we have not joined the pledge? You can easily understand. If you talk about the major methane emission sources of India, if you talk about major methane emission sources of India, you will notice that most of the methane comes from agriculture sector. So you can imagine, if India starts reducing the methane by 30%, it is obvious that India will have to put restrictions on agriculture sector, dairy sector, rice sector, and rice cultivation. Rice is a staple crop in India. More than half of the population still consume rice on a daily basis. On top of that, when it comes to dairy, as the country is growing, the demand of dairy is also growing, and we cannot let the milk cost very expensive. If the milk cost becomes expensive, it is likely that people may start selling adulterated milk in the market. The market may get flooded with adulterated milk, and that will affect human health and as well as food inflation, right? So India has not joined the global methane pledge as of now, although the International Methane Emission Observatory records the methane emissions of all countries including India. It records it for all countries including India because it's a United Nations initiative. Okay, although India is not a part of global methane pledge. Then guys, under this global methane pledge, in 2022, under the same methane pledge, there was a system launched called MARS. What is MARS? MARS stands for Methane Action. Just one second. MARS, Methane Action and Response System. Just one second. MARS stands for Methane Alert and Response System. Sorry, Methane Alert and Response System, not action. Methane Alert and Response System. Guys, for some topics even I also have to take references of my own notes because I should not be giving wrong information. Methane Alert and Response System. Methane Alert and Response System, MARS. So MARS is called Methane Alert and Response System. This is basically launched under the global methane pledge, and this is basically going to, it collects the data from International Methane Emissions Observatory. It collects the data from International Methane Emission Observatory, IMEA. So it collects the data from International Methane Emission Observatory, IMEA, right? MARS. And what is it, guys? It is an alert and response system. So wherever there is a methane release, wherever suddenly methane emission starts, the United Nations Environment Program, this also comes under UNEP, just like the global methane pledge. So United Nations Environment Program MARS system, it starts sending informations, or it starts sending alerts to the countries which end up emitting more methane. So guys, let's say for example, if suddenly there is an agriculture stubble burning taking place in India, in North India, the MARS system will quickly send updates to India, to the Indian government, that see, there is a lot of methane emissions taking place in the state of Punjab, in the state of Haryana, Rajasthan, all these states, right? So they will quickly send alerts that these states are emitting a lot of methane. Okay, so that is the Methane Alert and Response System. Okay, this is also a global initiative, guys. Then guys, after this there is one more initiative called Methane Sat. This was launched in 2023. Methane Sat, sorry, 2024. Methane Sat is a satellite. It is launched by EDF, Environment Defense Fund, right? EDF, Environmental Defense Fund. It's actually a NGO based in USA. Environmental Defense Fund, it's an NGO based in USA. And guys, this methane sat has been developed jointly by Harvard University. Harvard University is a joint partner of methane sat. What is it? It's just a small satellite, guys. The word sat means satellite only. So it is, you can just write down, it will basically orbit, write down, it will orbit Earth 15 times daily and monitor the methane emissions of oil and gas sector. It will orbit Earth 15 times daily and monitor methane emissions of oil and gas sector, So this is basically an initiative to simply observe the methane emissions of the oil and gas sector. It will going to monitor methane emissions of oil and gas sector with this help of the satellite methane sat. Then guys, see, so many initiatives just on methane, guys, and still there is one more initiative, guys. It's called low methane initiative, LOW. What is this LOW initiative? It is called lowering organic waste methane initiative. Lowering organic waste methane initiative. Lowering organic waste methane initiative, low methane. It was also introduced in 2024, and you can understand this is basically reducing methane emissions from legacy waste site, right? Lowering organic waste methane initiative, right? Lowering organic waste methane initiative. And guys, this is basically, actually this is an initiative from, ये भी United Nations का ही है. This is also related to United Nations, okay? But this was launched in a different summit called COP28. I'll talk about that later. If you want, you can just write down. It was initiated at COP28 at Dubai, 2024. 2023. I'm sorry guys, 2023, not 2024. 2023, right? So this is basically to reduce methane emissions from legacy waste sites, municipal waste, organic waste, all types of organic waste. So guys, did you see that there are almost 10 initiatives already just to check methane emissions globally? Are you guys able to understand? Please tell me yes in the chat. It was all the facts. Now UPSC have a habit of asking things related to these facts only. They will mention one or the other facts and they would simply ask you simple questions. The problem is more than half of the students don't know the name of the initiative. Forget about which organization has introduced it and what is the objective. Are you guys able to understand? Tell me yes in the chat quickly. Right? Understood all of you? This is what we have under the various methane related initiatives. Okay. These are the various methane related initiatives, and this concludes my discussion on this particular part. Methane related initiatives are over now. Now next is N2O. Please write down. Now we'll finish all the other gases quickly. Write down N2O. Next is nitrous oxide, N2O. Next greenhouse gas is N2O. Right? Now when I talk about N2O, nothing very special in this. Nothing very special when it comes to N2O, nitrous oxide. Actually guys, we all know that the sources, natural sources of CO2 or methane or N2O are common. So guys, whatever natural sources are there for either CO2, because we all know CO2, methane comes from organic matter. So wherever organic matter is going to be there, wherever biomass will be there, it will naturally produce N2 also, because nitrogen is an important constituent of that biomass. Because nitrogen is an important part of the biomass, we can't expect nitrogen not to be released when CO2 is being released or methane being released. So guys, the natural sources are common, so you will not find anything different. This is also produced from aerobic decomposition of bacteria, aerobic decomposition from bacteria. It will also be produced from volcanic eruptions, right? Forest fires, whatever things are there, they are common, nothing different, because nitrogen is also a part and parcel of organic matter, biomass, so it will also be produced, right? Just like we see other gases being produced, this will also be produced. When it comes to anthropogenic sources, here we see some differences. So in terms of anthropogenic sources, here we see some differences, and here we see differences like one is textile industry, especially guys artificial textile like artificial textiles like artificial fibers like nylon. So wherever nylon or artificial fibers are produced, you will see N2O being released there. N2O is going to be released in these places. It will be released from fertilizer plants, are going to release, right? These are the major sources. And guys, vehicular emissions, they will also be producing. Rest guys, all the things are same. Mining activities also release N2O, mines, they also release N2O. All these places are more or less similar. This is again something which I recommend that you read from the PMF and PMF book and just add the information in your notebook, right? So this is again something that you have to read from your PMF book, right? Nothing to just add here, right? Although I have got one image, this is basically trying to explain the various sources of N2O, right? This image is also there in your book itself, right? It's a image from PMF only, right? So you can see that anthropogenic sources of N2O mostly induces the impact. Anthropogenic sources, they mostly are climate and CO2 effects. Agriculture releases N2O. Agriculture is being produced from here. This is fossil fuel industry, biomass burning, post deforestation. So deforestation is also an impact. Reduction in deforestation can reduce, you can see the arrows going back. Then guys, waste and wastewater releases N2O. Natural sources, the biggest one is lightning and atmospheric thunder strikes, atmospheric nitrogen and deposition on land, and some other anthropogenic factors in the form of coastal and inland waterways, right? So these are the major impacts. There is nothing very different in terms of the source that produces CO2 or N2O. Nearly the same. It is nearly the same. Most of the N2O is basically, is going to be put back in the form of nitrogen, atmospheric nitrogen, right? Most of the N2O breaks down into atmospheric nitrogen, and that is the most common way of absorbing nitrogen back. Now guys, look at this comparison. I am yet to discuss HFC and all these gases, but look at this comparison. या चलो इसमें बाद में आते हैं, we'll talk about this later. So we have seen N2O. Now after N2O, what all gases we have? We have HFC, we have PFC, and we have SF6. We know that these three gases are man-made gases. They all are man-made gases, we are aware of this. And not just being man-made, these three gases are also known as fluorinated gases. They're also called as fluorinated gases. They're also called as fluorinated gases. Why fluorinated gases? Because you can see they all contain fluorine. Some में थोड़ा थोड़ा fluorine है. They all are having some fluorine in them, and that's why they are called fluorinated gases, right? they contain some kind of fluorine in it, right? Fluorinated gases. HFC, PFC, SF6, all three of them fluorinated gases. Now this fluorinated gases, where are we using it? I'm going to come back later. I'll come back later. Look at this comparison now. Please pay 100% attention. It is just going to help you out regarding the percentage of damage occurred from each gas. So look at this, guys. The blue color part is basically showing you the CO2 that is emitted. The CO2 that is emitted, but only from fossil fuel industry. The CO2 emitted from fossil fuel industry. If you talk about the total greenhouse gases production, this data is till 2019. This data is till 2019. This was reported in 2020, guys. So fossil fuel industry releases 64% of all CO2. 64% of all CO2 emissions come from fossil fuel industry alone. Got it? So you can understand where we have to start putting a bar, where we have to stop more CO2 emissions. Then, guys, this orange or this beige, this yellow beige color is 11%, which is again CO2 only. This is again CO2, but this is basically from land use. Land use means agriculture. Land use also means deforestation, change in forestry, change in land use pattern, land degradation. So this basically includes agriculture and land use patterns. I am just writing land use pattern, but you all understand this is what basically means is it is related to change in the land use pattern. Afforested land gets deforested, all these things. This is contributing around 11%. This is contributing around 11% of the CO2 emissions. So guys, if you talk about all the greenhouse gases, 64 plus 11, 75%. 75% of all greenhouse gases are just CO2. 75% of all the greenhouse gases that have responsible for climate change, it is just CO2. 75% is only CO2, guys. Right? These kind of percentage you should write. 75% is CO2. And out of this 75%, you can see 64% is only fossil fuel industry. And then, guys, we have 18%, and this 18% that is written here, this is from methane. This 18% is methane. This orange color is methane, right? And you can see methane, it is given here. And we have already seen what are the major sources of methane. We have already seen what are the major actions taken to reduce methane. So methane, though, we have already completed, right? 18% of the greenhouse gases, whatever has been released, they are contributed through methane, right? And it is also showing a graph that how the overall greenhouse gas emissions have increased. Earlier it was 40, it was less than 40, but now the graph shows that it has crossed 60 now. It is close to 60, right? What is the unit? Don't worry, guys, I'll explain the unit also, right? But unit, I'll explain it. We'll see if we can explain the unit today itself. So these are the major sources. And then, guys, then after that, this black color is nitrous oxide. You can see nitrous oxide percentage is just 4%. Only 4% of all greenhouse gas emissions are nitrous oxide. Only 4%, right, out of all the greenhouse gas emissions. And then, guys, lastly, just 2% is fluorinated gases. Just 2% is fluorinated gases. So out of all the greenhouse gases, fluorinated gases, or typically those gases which are only man-made, their contribution is just 2%. N2O is 4%, methane is 18%, and CO2, carbon dioxide, is 75%. I hope all of you guys are able to understand. 75% is carbon dioxide. Got it? So this is the differentiation of all the gases. And guys, you can have blind faith on this data, because this list that I'm using, it is official release of the United Nations IPCC publication, right? Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, their publication. I hope all of you guys are able to get it. This is what we have under the amount of greenhouse gases. Now guys, after this, let us quickly see what are the major areas from where HFC, PFCs and SF6 is released. Let's see guys, what are the major areas of their release. So I want you guys to pay 100% attention here. Please pay 100% attention here. Just one second. Okay, अच्छा delayed spring, ठीक है, all right. Okay, there is one more piece of information that I have kept for you guys. I'll explain that. As I finish that, but I reach that particular point. It is on impacts of climate change, right? So I hope you guys are able to understand. So now let's talk about PFCs and HCFCs, right? PFCs and HCFCs. So guys, what is HFCs? HFC, it's called hydrofluorocarbon. Now one source that I have told you already, one major area from where HFC is released or HFC is used, it is in refrigeration and air conditioners, right? HFC is used in refrigeration and air conditioner. So all the air conditioner refrigerators, they may have HFC. That is one source. We all are aware that is one source. But guys, apart from this, both HFC and PFC, they are also found in aerosols. They're also found in aerosol spray. What is an aerosol spray? What exactly do we understand by aerosol spray? So guys, aerosol, before I talk about aerosol spray, let me first quickly discuss the meaning of the word sol here. What is the meaning of the word sol? So I'll write it here. यहीं पे लिख लेते हैं. Sol guys, sol basically means colloidal solution. Sol basically means colloidal solution. Sol means colloidal solutions, or it basically means colloid particles. Colloid particles, right? Colloidal solution or colloid particles. Sol. So sol basically means colloidal solutions or colloid particles. What is the meaning of colloid particles? So guys, colloid particles are particles that have a size from 1 nanometers, that have got a size from 1 nanometers to 1000 nanometers. They have size 1 nanometers to 1000 nanometers. What is nanometer guys? Those of you who do not come from science background, nanometer is equal to 10 to the power minus 9 meters. That means 10 to the power minus 9 meters means if you take 1 meter size and break it down into 1 billion meters, 1 billion small units, you break down into 1 billion equal components, a single component that you will have is 1 nanometer. 1 billion, I'm saying billion is 10 to the power 9, right? So 1 billionth of a meter. So 10 to the power 9 meter means 1 billionth of a meter, right? 1 billionth of a meter, it's called nanometer. So what is a colloidal particle? A colloidal particle are colloidal particles are those particles which have a size of 1 to 1000 nanometer size particles. 1 to 1000 nanometer size particles are called colloidal particles. 1 to 1000 nanometer size, they are called colloidal particles. And guys, these colloidal particles are typically those particles which are particles of dust. They could be microorganisms. Many particles could be colloidal particles. So when you have these particles spread out, so I'll give you example. So these particles are called sol, right? The colloidal particles are called sol. So guys, when these sol particles are mixed in water, when these sol particles are mixed in water, when mixed in water, we call it hydrosol solution, right? Hydrosol solution. I hope you understand why. That means colloidal particles mixed in water, it's called hydrosol solution. A very good example of hydrosol solution around us or inside us are blood and milk. Blood and milk are good examples of hydrosol solutions. See, what is blood? Blood is not just water, guys. Blood is made up of blood protein called hemoglobin. Blood is made up of blood plasma. Blood is made up of blood cells. So many things are there, and then there is some water. All these particles are of the colloidal size, are of the size of colloids, and these particles are suspended together in the blood, in water, and that makes blood. So blood is actually a hydrosol solution. Blood is actually called a hydrosol solution, right? Similarly, when these salts, when mixed, so this is when mixed in water. And guys, what will happen when they are mixed in air? So when they are mixed in air, they are called aerosol solutions. Aerosol. So guys, when mixed in air, and remember guys, air itself is an aerosol medium. So what is an aerosol? I don't have a deodorant spray anywhere here, but if you notice a deodorant spray, I was having one bottle here. I kept it to show students, but I think somebody has thrown it away. Okay, not a problem. So if you take a deodorant bottle, you know that the bottle has some liquid. You shake it, you feel that there is some liquid inside. But the moment when you press the nozzle, what comes out is gas. Actually, guys, that nozzle breaks down that liquid into so small particles that is of the size of 1 nanometer to 1000 nanometer. It breaks down it into a size of 1 nanometer to 1000 nanometers, and that is what is a sol particle. And the moment when that sol particle in the form of fragrance gets released, it simply remains suspended in the air. It remains suspended in the air, and that's what is called aerosol. So aerosol means sol particles suspended in the air. Hydrosol means sol particles suspended in water. Tell me yes in the chat if you are able to understand. Tell me, Bharat, Nisha, what do you guys think? Sagar has left the class. Tell me guys, do you understand the meaning of the word sol? Tell me quickly. Nisha, what about you? Do you understand sol? So sol basically is particles of colloidal nature. So remember guys, blood, milk and air in general are all colloidal solutions. Whereas where blood and milk is a hydrosol solution and air is a aerosol solution. So guys, all these deodorants, right? Perfumes, fire extinguishers, right? Whatever spray are there, right? Insecticides, pesticide spray, whatever such spray are there where people can spray them on some surface and get rid of anything, they all are examples of aerosol sprays. They all are aerosol spray. I hope all of you guys are able to get it. They all are examples of aerosols, and this is where both HFC and PFC is used for. Both HFC and PFC is used for these purposes. Then guys, both PFC and HFC are also used for another application, that is organic solvent. They are used as organic solvents also, right? Organic solvents. Organic solvents are again basically to mix fragrances, to mix anything. It is same as aerosol spray only. It is basically meant to dissolve organic substances. So these are the two areas where HFCs and PFCs are used. When it comes to SF6, SF6 is primarily used in circuit breakers. It is used in circuit breakers. That means electrical component manufacturing uses SF6, and alongside with circuit breakers, SF6 is also used in released in semiconductor industry. Just like how NF3 is produced, this is also produced in this is also released in semiconductor industry, right? SF6. So SF6 is released in semiconductor industry and circuit breakers in electronic equipments, right? Especially the circuit breakers in transistors and such, right? Not the circuit breakers that we use in MCBs and such. I hope all of you understand SF6, right? So it is used in circuit breakers, right? Electronic equipments. So these are the areas where these man-made greenhouse gases are used for. I hope all of you guys are able to understand, right? This is the place where we use these man-made greenhouse gases. And now guys, this concludes our discussion on the major sources of the greenhouse gases and their composition as well. So all these things we have been able to complete here. Now guys, the next topic that we'll talk about. So this was a long discussion guys on the various sources of greenhouse gases, right? Now after completing the sources of greenhouse gas, now the next topic of our discussion is called global warming potential. Now after this we'll go little quickly, little fast, because we'll try to cover almost everything that we have to cover under miscellaneous terms here. So guys, let us start with the term global warming potential. We have around half an hour. We'll try to complete all these things here itself. So what is global warming potential? So guys, we have seen 6 greenhouse gases, right? We have studied 6 greenhouse gases: CO2, CH4, N2O, HFC, PFC, SF6. These are the 6 greenhouse gases that we have, right? ये 6 greenhouse gases हैं. All of you get it? These are the 6 greenhouse gases. Now these 6 greenhouse gases that we have here, these 6 greenhouse gases, we have studied them. But now the point is, out of these 6 greenhouse gases, do you think all 6 of them will have a same impact on global warming? Tell me guys, what do you think? Both Bharat and Nisha, you tell me, yes or no. If I release 1 kilogram of CO2 or 1 kilogram of HFC, do you think all these gases will have same impact on global warming? Do you think they will warm up the earth by the same proportion? No. They all have different chemical nature. They all have different physical properties also. So their impact on global warming is also different. So what is global warming potential? You first write down the definition and then I'll explain what is it. Write down global warming potential. Write down global warming potential, GWP. It refers to excuse me, it refers to the impact of a greenhouse gas. It refers to the impact of a greenhouse gas on global warming. It refers to the impact of the greenhouse gas on global warming. Full stop. You can write down one more sentence. Global warming potential, it is, write down, it is a comparison of a greenhouse gas. It is a comparison of a greenhouse gas it is a comparison of a greenhouse gas with carbon dioxide. It is a comparison of a greenhouse gas with carbon dioxide. Please underline CO2. It is a comparison of a greenhouse gas with carbon dioxide in terms of how much heat. It is in terms of how much heat. It is the comparison of greenhouse gases with carbon dioxide in terms of how much heat a greenhouse gas can trap. How much heat a greenhouse gas can trap over a period of 100 years. Although guys, it can be for 30 years, it can be for 100 years, right? Over a period of 100 years, how much heat a greenhouse gas can trap over a period of 100 years. Full stop. Over a period of 100 years. So it is a comparison of a greenhouse gas with that of carbon dioxide in terms of how much heat it can trap over a period of 100 years. Over a period of 100 years. Let me explain guys. Let me explain what this means. So guys, this is actually a relative comparison. It's a relative comparison. What do you understand, guys? Relative comparison. Relative comparison का मतलब क्या है? See, relative comparison basically here means that, see, when you compare, there could be two types of comparison: absolute and relative. In absolute comparison, you do not have any benchmark. You are simply measuring how much heat is being trapped by all the gases. But in relative comparison, we'll consider CO2 as 1. In relative comparison, we'll consider CO2 as 1. That means over a period of 100 years, mind my words, over a period of 100 years, if CO2 absorbs, over a period of 100 years, if CO2 absorbs whatever infrared CO2 is going to absorb over a period of 100 years, will treat all that as 1. Whatever infrared CO2 will end up absorbing over a period of 100 years, will consider all that as 1. Okay, all that would be considered as 1. Whatever is being trapped, whatever infrared is being captured, we'll consider that as 1. Okay, we'll consider that as 1. And then we'll compare how much of infrared is being trapped by other gases. So mind my words, guys, you have to be very responsive here. Suppose if I say that in a period of 100 years, CO2 end up trapping 1 unit of infrared, right? CO2 end up trapping 1 unit of infrared, or whatever infrared CO2 traps, let's call this value as 1 for a period of 100 years. Then in the same time period, how much infrared is going to be trapped by methane? And suppose I say methane traps 25. What does that mean? It means that over a period of 100 years, if carbon dioxide traps 1 unit of infrared, methane will trap 25 times more than CO2. Methane is going to trap 25 times more than CO2. It will trap 25 times more infrared than CO2. So are you guys able to understand? Methane proportion is 18%, but its impact is 25 times greater than CO2. Are you able to understand? That's why so many initiatives have been taken only for methane, because methane will end up trapping 25 times more infrared. In fact, guys, 25 times when I'm writing, it is still very reasonable. According to various sources, it could be 85, 25 to 85, anything. It could be anything from 25 times to 85 times. But guys, remember, UPSC will not ask values, because guys, the values, they differ. The values of global warming potential may be different. I may use different values here. Even in the PMF book, the values may be different, because guys, the values change due to various factors. I'll tell you the factors, and that's why the values may be different. But don't worry, order will remain the same. The order of trapping or the order of increasing GWP will remain the same, but values may differ a little, right? So methane has a global warming potential of 25 to 85. Please tell me yes in the chat if you guys understand the comparison here, right? If you guys understand the comparison, please write down yes in the chat. So if carbon dioxide is trapping 1 unit, methane will end up trapping 25 to 85 times more infrared, more heat. Then guys, N2O has a global warming potential of 350. That means N2O constitutes only 4% of the global greenhouse gases, but 1 kilogram of N2O is going to capture 350 times more heat than 1 kilogram of CO2. 350, guys. That means if you release 1 kilogram of CO2 and 1 kilogram of N2O, N2O will end up catching 350 times more heat. You can also say that 1 kilogram of N2O is equal to 350 kilograms of CO2. So even though in terms of proportion CO2 is 75%, N2O is 4%, but just imagine the impact those 4% will have on the environment. Are you guys able to understand? So this is 350 times more lethal. Then guys, we are entering into man-made gases, and here the comparison is not even comparable. HFC can trap up to 6,500 times more than CO2. So HFC can end up trapping 6,500 times more heat than carbon dioxide. HFC can end up trapping 6,500 times more heat than carbon dioxide. So one can easily understand HFC is 6,500 times more dangerous. All these three gases, guys, all these three gases, their total concentration is just 2%. But you can imagine the impact is 6,500 times HFC. For PFC, it is 12,500 times. For SF6, it is 21,000 times. Look at this. The comparison is massive, guys. Right? And you know what, guys? When it comes to these gases, the naturally occurring gases, their shelf life or their life in the atmosphere is hardly 100 years. Sometime it can go up to 100 to 400 years, right? Like N2O is having a long life, up to 400 years it can go, 100 to 400 years. But when it comes to these man-made gases, their life can be 100x times higher. In fact, we do not even know till how long it will remain in the atmosphere. Like scientists still don't know if SF6 has been released today, till how long it will remain in the atmosphere. We do not know that. It is 100 times higher than what these naturally occurring greenhouse gases will remain for. So you can understand that the impact is multiple times greater, even though the proportion is just 2%. Are you guys able to understand? That's why this is also a major greenhouse gas of concern, right? Because of their very high shelf life and impact. I hope all of you guys are able to understand. This is what is known as global warming potential. And guys, under the discussion of global warming potential itself, let us talk about a concept known as carbon footprint. Write down, guys, here itself, write down. Acha, first, let me tell you what are the factors that define global warming potential, right? So guys, global warming potential is dependent on various factors. There are some factors which define global warming potential. Let's write down those factors here. Okay, उन factors को लिखते हैं. Global warming potential depends on various factors. So the factors that affects GWP, there are three factors, guys. Number one, the composition of the greenhouse gas, right? If the greenhouse gas itself is in higher proportion, right? If higher proportion means higher GWP, right? If the concentration of the greenhouse gas, actually composition is not the right word, concentration is the right word. Concentration, not composition. So if the concentration of the greenhouse gas itself is high, then it will have higher GWP, right? Second is ability to trap infrared in a given temperature. So guys, at a given temperature, gases also expand, right? Gases, they have a property of expanding with heat. So some gases, they may not absorb a lot of infrared, but if the temperature increases, if the surrounding temperature naturally increases and the gases starts expanding, then they may end up trapping more infrared. Like, you know, you'll be surprised to know that if you talk about methane, there was a time that methane was trapping only 12 times more infrared, but now it has trapping 25 times more, is because if the global temperature increases, the ability of trapping infrared further increases for some gases, right? So ability to trap infrared in a given temperature or at a given temperature, right? This is another factor. So some gases, they expand due to heat, which ends up trapping more infrared. And third factor is, actually second factor may likh diya, ability of trapping infrared at a given temperature. And then guys, the third one is, so actually the third point is written here. The third point was the prevailing temperature, right? Right. So prevailing temperature. So if the prevailing temperature itself is higher, the GWP of the gas may further increase, right? So if the temperature already is greater, so first is concentration and second is temperature. If the concentration is high, GWP will also be high. And if the prevailing temperature is already high, GWP will also be higher for gases, right? So it is considered to be a vicious circle. When the temperature increases, gases ends up trapping more infrared, making the temperature even hotter, right? So that is what GWP, these are the three factors on which GWP depends on. Got it, guys? Now let's quickly write down the topic of carbon footprint. Please write down carbon footprint. Write down, guys, quickly what is carbon footprint. Okay. Now guys, before I talk about carbon footprint, let's suppose I ask you let's suppose you guys decide, let's say both of you decides to go and check the greenhouse gas emissions of the nearest factories and industries around your house. So let's suppose you go to some factory which is close to your house and ask the factory owners that how much greenhouse gases you are emitting. Suppose the factory owner tells you that he's emitting, let's suppose it is just an example, suppose the factory owner tells you that he's emitting 10 tons of CO2, okay, 2 tons, or let's suppose थोड़ा बढ़ा देते हैं, 4 tons of methane, 4 tons of methane, 1 ton of N2O, yeah चलो 2 tons of N2O, 2 tons of N2O, 1 ton of HFC, and let's say 1 ton of SF6. Let's suppose this is what the factory owner tells you, that this much of greenhouse gas he's emitting. And now what he does, he simply adds all these values. So 10 plus 4, 14, 16, 17, 18, and tells you that he's producing 18 tons of greenhouse gases. Guys, do you think that this is the right way of calculating greenhouse gases? Can you simply add 10 tons of CO2 with 1 ton of SF6 when we know that SF6 is 21,000 times more dangerous than CO2? Of course, this is not the right way. So guys, this way of representing greenhouse gases is not the right way. This is not the right way of representing greenhouse gases. What is the right way of representing greenhouse gases? What we do, guys, you take this value and then you multiply these values. You multiply with these values with their respective GWPs, right? So you multiply 10 tons of CO2 with 1, what you get is 10 tons of CO2, right? GWP of CO2 was 1 only. You multiply 4 tons of methane, let's take the value 25 with 25 and you get 100 tons. But guys, what should be the unit here? Guys, what was GWP? It was a comparison of greenhouse gas with that of CO2. It was a comparison of greenhouse gas with that of CO2. So what is basically happening here, that we are basically converting the impact that each greenhouse gas have in comparison to CO2, right? That is the objective here. So if I multiply 25 GWP of methane was simply meaning that whatever infrared is going to be trapped by CO2, if you compare the same with methane, methane will end up trapping 25 times more infrared. So the idea was that if you release 1 kilogram of methane or 25 kilograms of CO2, they both will end up trapping same amount of infrared. So guys, when I multiply the amount of methane with the GWP of methane, don't you think I have deduced the value in terms of CO2? Because all of them were in comparison to CO2 only. So guys, can I write the unit as 100 tons of CO2 equivalents? Tell me yes in the chat. If the factory owner produces 4 tons of methane, but the moment when I multiply it with GWP, I get 100 tons of CO2 equivalents of greenhouse gas. That means 4 tons of methane will be equal to 100 tons of CO2. Are you guys able to understand? Please tell me yes in the chat. Nisha, what about you? Can I say that 4 tons of methane will be equal to 100 tons of CO2? That is the meaning of GWP, global warming potential. How much greenhouse gases will trap infrared in comparison to CO2? So if I multiply the value with 25, I will get 100 tons of CO2 equivalent. So that means 4 tons of methane will be much more dangerous than 10 tons of CO2. 4 tons of methane will induce heating up equal to 100 tons of CO2, whereas 10 tons of CO2 will only produce 10 tons equivalent. Are you able to understand? That is the reason 18% of methane is much more severe, much more dangerous than 75% of CO2. 2% of fluorinated gases is much more serious than 18% of methane. I hope all of you get it right. Then guys, 2 tons of N2O. So I'll multiply the N2O also with its global warming potential, and we get 700 tons. Again, we'll write down 700 tons of CO2 equivalents, because all of them has been deduced in terms of CO2. Then guys, 1 ton of HFC, I'll multiply this with GWP of HFC, and now it is 6500 tons of CO2 equivalent. And similarly, I multiply 1 ton of SF6 with 21,000, and I get 21,000 tons of CO2 equivalent. And now when I add this, when I add all these values, I get the real impact or the real greenhouse gases. So guys, 10, 800, first 20, let's just add guys quickly. 0, 1, then we have 8, 13, 1, 7, I think 28310. This is what you get. So 28310. I think this is the total. 28310. This is what is the total tons of CO2 equivalents. This is the real value of greenhouse gases that the factory is emitting. And guys, this value that you got, 28310 tons of CO2 equivalent, this is known as carbon footprint. This is called carbon footprint. This is called carbon footprint. So what is carbon footprint? Please write down. First you write down the definition again, then we'll come back to the calculation again. Write down the definition, carbon footprint. Write down. Write down, it is the total greenhouse gas emissions, carbon footprint. It is the total greenhouse gas emissions. Carbon footprint, it is the total greenhouse gas emissions by a person, total greenhouse gas emissions by a person, comma, total greenhouse gas emissions by a person, comma, a factory. You can calculate it for anyone guys, you can calculate it for your own lifestyle, comma, a factory, industry, country, etc. Total greenhouse gas emissions by a person, factory, industry, country, etc. You can calculate it for anything guys. You can also calculate for a product. If you want, you can calculate the carbon footprint of a single product also. You can write down this also, right? Of a person, of a product, of a factory, everything. So it is the total greenhouse gas emissions by a person, by a product, by a factory, by industry, by a country, etc. etc. When by a person, etc. Total etc. by multiplying the global warming potentials, by multiplying the global warming potentials. Yeah, please write down like this guys, please write down, by multiplying the amount of greenhouse gas produced, by multiplying the amount of greenhouse gas produced with their respective global warming potentials, by multiplying the amount of greenhouse gas produced, by multiplying the amount of greenhouse gas produced with their global warming potentials, with their global warming potentials, full stop, it is represented it is represented, or you can say it is denoted in terms of tons of CO2 equivalents. It is denoted in terms of tons of CO2 equivalents. So this value of carbon footprint, it is denoted in terms of tons of CO2 equivalents. Of course, guys, when you multiply the total composition of a greenhouse gas with its GWP, you get the actual thing in terms of tons of CO2 equivalent, right? It is denoted in terms of tons of CO2 equivalents. Tons of CO2 equivalents. Got it? This is called carbon footprint. I hope all of you guys are able to understand. This is called carbon footprint. It is denoted in terms of tons of CO2 equivalents. So guys, carbon footprint is the total greenhouse gas emitted by a person, by a product, anything. So guys, let's suppose right now I'm wearing, let's suppose, a cotton shirt. You can calculate the carbon footprint of a cotton shirt also. How? See, cotton is produced. Chalo, let me take example of your lifestyle first. Then we'll take the example of a product. So guys, let's suppose you are living in a city like Delhi, Bangalore. Chalo, Bangalore is still having a pleasant weather. Delhi, Ahmedabad, right, which are somewhat warmer cities. They don't have a very, very healthy weather patterns, right? So if you are living in a city like Gurgaon, Delhi, Noida, Ahmedabad, which are comparatively hot cities, Jaipur. So here having air conditioner has become somewhat a necessity, right? Having air conditioner is necessity in these cities. In Bangalore, it is very pleasant. People normally do not keep air conditioners there. They don't need air conditioners, but in these cities, they need air conditioners. So let's suppose when you go to sleep in a city like these, you turn on your AC. Now your air conditioner is running on electricity. Nearly 70% of all the power produced in India, it is produced from coal. So that means there is carbon emissions happening because of your air conditioner consumption at the thermal power plant. So that is the carbon footprint of your consumption, your lifestyle. Then let's suppose you wake up in the morning. Of course, the carbon footprint of an average person in Delhi will have a higher carbon footprint than a person living in Bangalore. But guys, the parameters could be much more. Let's see, right? So, so you emit, the carbon emission is higher because of your AC consumption. Then guys, let's suppose you wake up in the morning, and when you wake up, you switch off your AC, but then you go and turn on your geyser. The geyser that you turn on, it is going to heat your water. The water heating again consumes energy, again carbon footprint is emitted. Suppose if you do not even want to heat the water, you want to take bath with cold water, that's well and good. But even that cold water that is supplied to your tap, that is reaching your tap, the water is not coming from immediate underground. The water is coming from some distant river. Like if you live in Delhi, Noida, Gurgaon, the water most likely is coming from Yamuna or Ganga river. So from Yamuna and Ganga, there is a massive canal system created that involves so much of cement, so much of iron steel is put in building those canals. And then from those canals, it goes, pumps into the water pumping stations across the city of Delhi, across the city of Noida, across the city of Gurgaon. And then from those water pumps, it is being put into the underground water supplies across the city. And then from those underground water supply, your building might be having a booster or a motor that will pull the water from those underground water pipelines, and that water will be supplied to your overhead tank, and then from the overhead tank it goes in your tap. So don't you think this water that is being supplied to your house, even this water also comes at a very high carbon footprint? There is so much of energy involved in pumping all this water all the way from the river, all the way from deep into the ground. And also there is construction of canals, dams, so many things have happened which involves iron, steel, cement, all these things which have also released carbon footprint, right? So the water consumption will also have carbon footprint. And sadly, this is true for every city, not only for Delhi. Every city will have a water supply network, and all that water supply network will be dependent on very high carbon emissions. And suppose after taking proper bath, you go out to have your breakfast. When you take your breakfast, let's suppose you eat bread. Now bread is made from wheat. Wheat is cultivated on the agricultural field, and to produce wheat, farmers are spraying urea, which is manufactured in factories. Urea is produced from, guys, urea is typically produced from natural gas, methane se produce hota hai, by a process called Haber-Bosch process. Urea is produced in a process called Haber-Bosch process from natural gas. So urea production has some carbon emissions, carbon footprint. Then guys, farmers are also spraying pesticides. They are also produced in factories. Again, some carbon footprint. And then once the wheat is cultivated, the wheat is then transported from the factory to from the field to the factory, where the factory also invest in the same energy consumption process, where they grind the wheat, put it through a proper process of converting into a wheat flour, then into a batter, then into a bread. And once the bread is produced, all the bread slicing is done, and then it is packed in a plastic pack. It is put in a plastic bag, and that plastic bag is non-biodegradable. Its carbon footprint is even greater. And then through a proper supply chain, it comes to your grocery store, and from there you purchase it. Don't you think a single piece of bread will also have some carbon emissions? And then suppose after taking your breakfast, and I'm just talking about bread, if you're having jam with bread, then you have even more carbon emissions. Sugar comes from sugarcane, and sugarcane is produced mostly in the states of Maharashtra, in the states of UP, and somehow it is also produced in smaller proportion in Assam, in Karnataka, in Tamil Nadu also, but mostly it is produced in these two states. And you guys mostly Haryana, Punjab, UP, these areas, and there's an entire supply chain for sugar, right? So you can just imagine every product has a carbon footprint, and whatever we demand in our lifestyle, they all will have carbon footprint. And then suppose you finish your breakfast, and then you go to your office or to your institution or to your college, anywhere, and you take public transportation. It's good that you take public transportation. It could be a bus, it could be a metro, it could be it could be auto, anything. You take any of these public transportation, even those transportation are also running on fossil fuel, or if it is a metro, it is running on electricity. There is again supplied from 70% coal. So guys, do you understand everything in our lifestyle is causing some carbon emissions? Do you understand? We can find the carbon footprint of your lifestyle. And guys, in this lifestyle itself, we can also find carbon footprint of each and every product. Like we found the carbon footprint of bread, we found the carbon footprint of jam, we could find the carbon footprint of water being supplied, everything. So tomorrow, if Government of India decides that all the water supply in the country has to be zero carbon footprint, that means all the pipelines, all the pumping stations, all the dams, canals, everything that is going to be built, they will be built with green steel, green cement, green piping, everything. Are you guys able to understand? Tell me yes in the chat if you are able to think in that direction of carbon emissions, right? Tell me yes in the chat quickly. Nisha, Bharat, come on quickly. So this is basically what is carbon footprint. And guys, in this carbon footprint, there is also a term called fugitive emissions. There is also one more term called fugitive emissions. What are fugitive emissions, guys? Fugitive emissions are basically those emissions which are going unnoticed. That means people are not even noticing that these emissions are also there, but they are not being calculated in the final carbon footprint. Let's suppose I take carbon footprint of a shirt. So I'm wearing a cotton shirt right now. So this cotton shirt that I'm wearing, of course the cotton is cultivated in Maharashtra. I'm living in Delhi. The cotton is being produced in Maharashtra. Let's assume it is in Maharashtra, Punjab or Gujarat. These are the main cotton producing states. So let's suppose the cotton shirt is the cotton is cultivated in Maharashtra. Now from the cultivation of cotton in Maharashtra, now the cotton planter, the cotton farmer is again spraying fertilizer, it is spraying pesticides, all those things. And also he's buying BT cotton seeds, which are also expensive seed produced in a factory. So seeds will have carbon footprint. The pesticides will have carbon footprint. The fertilizer will have carbon footprint. And once he will pick all the cotton, when he will harvest all the cotton, The cotton is going to be kept in his godown, and from the godown it will be taken to a factory. Suppose if the factory is in Gujarat, the cotton is in Maharashtra, but the cotton from Maharashtra goes to Gujarat. Don't you think in the supply chain there is a lot of fossil fuel emitted? The supply chain could be train is running on electricity, again causing fossil fuel emission. The supply chain could be buses, or sorry, trucks are running on fossil fuel. So this supply chain, we sometimes do not even consider the carbon footprint of supply chain. That is called fugitive emission. Those emissions which are not accounted for in the final calculation of the carbon footprint of a product. Fugitive emissions, they go unnoticed, right? So suppose the cotton from the field goes to a plant in Gujarat. So at Gujarat, they will be undergoing all the process, everything, the coloring of the shirt, dyeing of the shirt, manufacturing, stitching, everything is done there, packaging, everything. But from there, from this plant in Gujarat, it goes all the way to Delhi. Again, the carbon footprint is already very high till Gujarat, but once it reaches Delhi, there is also another carbon footprint of the supply chain. But nobody consider that carbon footprint. So that is called fugitive emissions. Fugitive emissions are, you can just write down, they are those emissions of carbon, right? They are those emissions of carbon. Now guys, you understand that when we say carbon, we are not talking about carbon dioxide particularly. We are talking about carbon footprint, which is a measure of all the greenhouse gases multiplied by GWP. Are you guys able to understand? So whenever now I would use the word carbon emissions, I'm not just talking about CO2. It also includes methane, it also includes fluorinated gases, it also includes N2O. All these gases are now taken together as carbon footprint. Okay, so write down fugitive emissions. Fugitive emissions are those greenhouse gases or those carbon emissions which are not measured or which are not accounted in measuring the carbon footprint of a product or a service. So those carbon emissions which are not accounted in measuring the carbon footprint of a product or a service. So when it comes to the concept of fugitive emissions are those emissions which are not accounted in the carbon footprint of a product or a service. Are you guys able to understand? This is called fugitive emissions. I hope all of you guys are able to understand this, right? This is called fugitive emissions. So fugitive emissions are basically those emissions which are not counted in the measurement of the carbon footprint of any product and service. Got it? This is called fugitive emissions. So guys, the problem is that we have to somehow do carbon footprint calculations so accurately that fugitive emissions are eliminated. They are not there at all. They should be accounted. Or if it is not possible to add fugitive emissions, we have to reduce fugitive emissions. We have to reduce or wherever possible eliminate it. Like guys, let me tell you, I'll give an example, right? Guys, you know about these quick commerce companies like Big Basket, Zepto, Blinkit. You must have heard of these. We call them quick commerce, right? Quick commerce means that you order them and quickly you get delivered the things, right? All of you are aware of these quick commerce companies, Blinkit, Big Basket, Zepto, right? Earlier we had this company Dunzo, which eventually got converted into Zepto, right? All of you have heard of them, right? Blinkit and all these companies, you have heard of them, right? Tell me yes or no in the chat. Come on, quickly. You have never heard of Blinkit, Zepto, Big Basket. These are quick commerce websites. You have heard of it, right? Nisha, Bharat, both of you have heard of it. All right, good. So now I'll give you one example. Although it's an old example, but it is my own example. So guys, there was once a day when I was scanning through these websites or this mobile app, and I found that Washington apples, that means apples from America, Washington, produce of USA, those apples were being sold at a discounted price. They were being sold at a price of 50% discount. I don't really remember the price, but it was at a good discount. And suddenly I saw the Indian Himalayan Queen apples. Himalayan Queen are those apples which grow at a higher Himalayan altitude. They grow at an altitude of 16,000 feet, 20,000 feet, right? Where the temperature is sub-zero or extremely freezing temperature. It reaches close to that temperature. So those are called Himalayan Queen apples. They are also dark red apples, right? Very good quality. So I found that the Himalayan Queen apples of Himachal Pradesh, they were more expensive than the Washington apple of USA. And when I saw that, of course, the Washington apple, it appealed me because imported product, it is an imported product. So I thought, why don't I order the Washington apple? And I ordered them. Now when the order came, I found that each and every apple was actually Washington apple. It had the barcode that it is a produce of Washington, everything. So I was very happy that I got a good deal for imported apples, which were even lesser costing than Indian apples. But then I realized that if I would have considered the carbon footprint of this product, even though it is costing me cheaper, it is cheap because America gives a lot of subsidies to its farmers in USA, and that is why their production is cheaper than the Indian production of apples. And they are easily able to flood the international market with their cheap apples because America gives so much of subsidies to the farmers, and that's why the cost of Washington apple transported from USA, going all the way through ships and other transportation means, reaching the port, maybe in Chennai, maybe in Mumbai, Kolkata, anywhere, and from there traveling all across the country, length and breadth, covering the length of the country and reaching Delhi, was still cheaper than the Himalayan Queen apple that grows just 2 states above Delhi. We have Himachal Pradesh, and then bringing them from Himachal Pradesh to Delhi, it was costing more. So of course I was happy because I got a good economic deal. But don't you think, if you consider the carbon footprint of this apple, which has been cultivated in USA, traveled all the way to India, and then from the ports of India reaches Delhi, you can just imagine the carbon emissions of this single apple is way greater than the carbon emissions of Himalayan Queen. So guys, now if you compare the carbon footprint, and what if government across the world starts charging you not for just the value of the product but the amount of carbon emissions made, then don't you think it will be clear that if a product, even though it is very expensive, even though it is very good quality, if it is produced at a very far off distance, by the time it reaches you, its cost should be high because of all the carbon that has been emitted. But unfortunately, all this carbon is not being considered in the overall carbon footprint. This becomes fugitive emissions. So guys, I always tell this to the students that you can't do much. It is the bigger responsibility is with the government. Government have to make laws to promote the right things. I'll talk about this in tomorrow's class further. But a single person may not do much about it. But what is the best thing that you can do is start buying products which are locally produced. And when I say locally produced, the closer is the production center to your house, lesser is going to be the carbon footprint of those products. Tell me yes in the chat if you are able to understand. So if suppose there is a farm nearby my house which produces fruits, vegetables and some grains, if I purchase from that farm, it would be having less fugitive emissions because the transportation emissions are almost zero. But suppose if I'm staying in Delhi and I want to purchase something that has been cultivated in Tamil Nadu, I want to purchase something that has been cultivated in Assam, Bihar, West Bengal or Jharkhand, of course the transportation emissions are going to be very high. So this is the factor of fugitive emissions. We have to start considering them and eliminate them as much as possible. So guys, this is the reason when Prime Minister of India also says that be vocal for local, he's saying that Atmanirbhar Bharat. Of course, today when he's saying about becoming Atmanirbhar, it is mainly because of tariffs and the decline in exports that India may see. But you have to understand it, if you consider it only from the point of view of environment, it is important that the more local goods you consume, the lesser will be the carbon footprint. I hope all of you guys are able to understand. So locally produced, guys, mind my words, from this class onwards you will notice that every time my discussions will revolve around our own consumption pattern. I would be questioning our own consumption pattern in almost every circumstances, because it is our own consumption pattern that basically is the bigger problem. If you want to consume more dairy, you can't blame the animal husbandry owners or the dairy farmers, right? Because they have to exploit the cows in order to produce more dairy products. I hope all of you guys are able to get it right. So methane emissions are obviously going to be higher. So guys, this concludes everything in today's class. Tomorrow when we meet, we'll talk about all these terminologies, and I believe if tomorrow I'm able to finish all the impacts of, so I think till tomorrow we should be able to complete all the impacts of climate change by tomorrow. And today's third, fourth, fifth. By the end of the fifth class, sixth class, the theory part of sixth class, the topic of climate change should be over, right? And then seventh and eighth class, I'll use it for international relations part of climate change, right? So climate change as a chapter should be over by the sixth and seventh class, right? All right, guys, I hope all of you guys were able to understand everything. So this concludes today's class. We'll be meeting tomorrow. All the best, guys. Thank you.